All right, brothers and sisters, I'm here with an example of program that you need to do for this week. All right, you can see here at the end of the reading for chapter 4 that there are several programs. I'm going to take on number 4. Basically, I'm going to build a form to get an address, a name and address, and then I'm going to output that to the HTML document. Okay, well, very first, we need to build the form. We need to build 5 text fields, one for name, one for street, one for city, state, and zip code. All right, so let's just go ahead and get to that. So very first, we want to build a name text box. Okay, and to make sure they all show up on a single line, let's do that. I'm going to copy here, and I'm going to say street. Okay, next we need the city, state, and zip code. Okay, finally we need to add the button to trigger the make address. Okay, almost all of this is review from last chapter, except we've now got a button with an on-click attribute. The on-click attribute is going to call our very first JavaScript function, okay? And I can define a JavaScript function up here by using the function keyword, and then using the exact same name, open, close, curly brackets, and then everything inside of the function will happen when I click the button. For now, I'm just going to add a console.log statement. This is a very simple debugging or checking mechanism to say, is something happening that I expect to? Okay, before I start writing the JavaScript to build the address, I would like to run this in Chrome and just make sure that this is all showing up correctly. I'm going to hit F12 on my keyboard. This brings up the Chrome developer tools. This is going to be your best friend this semester. It gives you a view of the console, it gives you a view of the sources, and if there were any errors, it would show up here in the console. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and click my button. I'm going to look in the console and I should see this message appear, and sure enough it does. Okay, so I've made a button, I've hooked it up to a JavaScript function, and I know that it's happening when I click the button. So the very next step for me is I need to go and pull values out of all of these text boxes. And then finally, I need to build an address. Okay, so very first, let me write some code to go get all of the data out of the text boxes. Here I'm creating a variable called name. Okay, and then this line of code is probably going to be your most used line of code in this entire class. Document.getElementById. Basically, we're saying go to the HTML document and then get an element with an ID that I specify. And the very first one we want to get is txt name, and from that text box I want to grab out the value. Okay, so once again, go to the document, get an element with the ID name, and grab the value. Okay, let's copy and paste this for the other 4. So give me a variable named street, go to the document, get an element named text street, and then grab its value. Same deal for city. Same deal for state. And finally, same deal for zip code. Sometimes, well, just know that these variable names are not connected at all to these IDs, but when we say go to the document and get an element with an ID, this has to match exactly the ID in the HTML element. Okay, so now, just to make sure that this is all working, I'm going to console.log name plus a space plus street plus a space plus city plus a space plus state plus a space plus zip. Okay, and just to illustrate an error in the console, I'm going to actually refer to a variable called zip code that doesn't exist, and we should see this error trigger when I click the button. Very important that when you make changes, you save. So you can see here if I make any changes in Notepad++, the little floppy disk turns from blue to red, but once I go ahead and save, it turns back from red to blue. Okay? Once you've saved, you need to refresh in your browser to get the latest version of the code into your browser. Okay, and I'm going to fill out the data. I'm going to click this button and I am expecting to see an error. Okay, I've got the developer console open still and I'm on the console tab and it tells me here some very confusing and cryptic but eventually useful information. Okay, very first notice over here it says 1.html:12. This means in my file 1.html on line 12 there is a problem. So if I highlight line 12 and then I go read this problem, it says cannot read property value of null. Okay, and this is pretty cryptic, but what it's basically saying is I went to the document like you asked me, I tried to get an element by ID by the name of txt code, and I couldn't find it, and this is not the error that I was trying to trigger. So this happens. txt code doesn't exist, txt zip does. So let's go ahead and use that. And now that I've done that, I'm going to save. I'm going to refresh, type in my data. I'm going to click the button, and now I'm hoping to see the error that I introduced. Sure enough, on line 15, there's an error, zip code is not defined. And that's because my variable is called zip, but I've referred to a variable called zip code that doesn't exist. So one error on purpose, one error we'll also say was on purpose. No, it wasn't. It was an accident. Okay, save, refresh, type in our data. Okay, and actually now we are logging it all out into the console in the order that we expect. Okay, very good. So now we just need to format the address and then we need to output it. Okay, so what I want to do now is go back and make sure that I understand just exactly what's being asked of us. Right here we need to do the name on one line, the street address on another, then the city, state, and zip code all on a line, but put a comma in between the city and the state. So let's go ahead and start forming that, okay? I'm going to create a new variable. I'm going to call it formatted address, and I'm going to say make it equal to the name plus an HTML break tag plus the street, and then add another HTML break tag. And then I'm going to add the city with a comma, space. Then I'm going to add the state with a space in between, and then I'm going to add the zip code. Okay, and after I've done all of that, I want to output this to my HTML document. So once again, we're going to use document, go to the HTML document, get an element by ID. But this time, we are going to pick the output div. You can see that's just a div here in my program. And then rather than setting the value, I'm going to set the inner HTML of that to formatted address. Okay, and this hopefully should be everything that we need. I'm going to come in here and make sure I saved, refresh, and now I will say Ben Davidson, 123 Easy Street, Lehi, Utah, 84043. Click the button, and there we go. Ben Davidson, 123 Easy Street, Lehi, Utah. All right, so the main focus of this chapter is getting values out of your HTML document or getting values in through a pop-up and then posting or sending output out to your HTML document. So here you've seen an example of how to do that in a program. Thank you for watching.